Welcome to Wisdom Unlocked, The Ways of God, a production of Lionshare, a ministry that aims to co-mission with Jesus in making disciples of all nations. We ignite and provide resources to disciple makers in the church and throughout the vocations. In our world today, there is more information available than at any time in history, but wisdom is in short supply. In this podcast, you'll hear how learning about the character and ways of God is a guide to wisdom.
Welcome. Hey, everyone. I'm Mel Mills, sitting in for Sonia Beerson, host of the Wisdom Unlocked, The Ways of God podcast with Pastor Dave Buehring. I'm an entrepreneur and author who serves on Lionshare's board, and today I'm joined by fellow board member, my friend Kent Chevalier. Kent was a pastor in the local church for more than 2 decades, but stepped out a couple of years ago to become the chaplain of the Pittsburgh Steelers through the Ministry of Athletes in Action. Welcome, Kent.
What's up, Mel? Man, it's great to be on here with you, and so appreciative that Dave and Sonia would give us an opportunity to be on Wisdom Unlocked, man. So thanks for having me on, bro.
I know, man. It's been Wisdom Unlocked. We're in the 4th season now, and so it's exciting to kind of get in and to help continue that for another season. And so today we're going to be talking about from the podcast title, The Ministry of Availability. But before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about a discipleship journey. We're going to be talking about a topic that you feel passionate about, this ministry of availability. And I wanted to mention something you and I are both passionate about, this new version of a discipleship journey. This is Lionshare's primary resource for helping equip disciple makers who make disciples. Kent, tell me a little bit about why you're such a big fan of a discipleship journey, or as we call it, ADJ, and talk a little bit about just its impact on your life.
Yeah, man, I'm so excited that there's a new version, updated version, I should say,
just released.
Yep. And man, because my version that I have, like it's being held together by like duct tape, man. So I'm excited to have the one in my hands now. And dude, I love ADJ. And here's a little bit of a history for me, is that I first heard Dave Buehring at Acts Alive camp way back in like 2003. And the content that Dave was teaching in what was called the Acts Alive manual would become Discipleship Journey workbook. And so, man, as I sat there as a youth pastor, I had taken all of my students to come to Acts Alive. There were things that Dave was sharing to a group of students that, man, all of a sudden my ears got really big. Like I had never heard some of this stuff before. So what he was teaching out of that manual then became ADJ. And as I walked through ADJ for the first time, man, God used it to transform my life. So like that, from hearing Dave to a couple years later, it becoming a discipleship journey, which is, a discipleship journey is simply a tool that you use beside the scriptures. It helps you walk through the scriptures in a very systematic discipleship journey process. Man, God, not only with the guys that I was walking through, but man, God was transforming my life as a result of walking through discipleship journey, man. So I'll never forget the conversations that I had with Dave, man, as I took my students to Acts Alive. And I'm like, dude, I've never heard some of this stuff. I remember some of the private conversations that he and I had. And it turned out that, Dave began to disciple me in leadership settings and things like that. So not only is it special because Acts Alive turned into a discipleship journey, but man, I have used this in my life. But then, Mel, like this resource,
good.
It turned into, like, I have watched God not only transform my life through it, but also at this point, but man, I've probably taken over 400 guys in the last 15 years. I've taken 400 guys through this, and I have watched as God has through this content, obviously through the power of the scriptures and the way that it's put out. I've watched marriages be reconciled, man. I've watched families come back together. I have watched guys who have stepped away from a career path to jump into a different career path because God used this, season of a discipleship journey that they felt God's call to go into a different direction, including my life, man. And so I love discipleship journey. I've been using it a long time in the local church context. Love it.
That's rich, man. Man, that's rich. That's the best promo we could ever have for the new book, and it's out right now. But man, I definitely echo all of that. I came upon this. I think it was in 2011 that Dave brought this to our church, Epicenter of Worship in Lansing, and I remember thinking to myself, I've been doing life and faith all wrong. I remember thinking wow, I had been, I think, a Christian. I had been a Christian most of my life. I professed salvation early, but this stuff was all foreign to me. And it was very much clear, I've been doing it all wrong. And there were just things I didn't know. And it was just oh, that makes sense. And it just really opened up an entire new world. Yeah. And just a different way of thinking. And man, it was just when you're exposed to truth, it just kind of, man, when you submit yourself to it, it just kind of creeps itself into every crook and cranny and corner. And that's exactly what it did. And over the years, it was just, there have been times, and I say this often, where, whether it's, in politics or whatever's going on in the world, I may not be able to always articulate why something is going wrong or what someone is doing wrong, or may not be able to always fully articulate when something's off. But at this point, because of a discipleship journey, I've learned the ways of God. Yes. And I can confidently say that's not the ways of God, or those are the ways of God. I may not always be able, again, to articulate, what, why, and, but I know it's taught me the ways of God. And when I know that. Agree.
And for me, Mel, there's one chapter that has changed the trajectory of my life, my marriage, the way that I parent, the way that I pastor. And here's the chapter in discipleship journey. And it's something that maybe as a kid growing up in church, I heard about it, but I wasn't listening, if you know what I mean. I heard it with my ears, but I didn't listen with my heart. It's the chapter on hearing the voice of God. And that chapter for me has helped me to recognize the voice of God and the way that he speaks to me through his word, through different people. And what it has done in my faith, it has given me a confidence to be able to move forward, knowing that I've heard the voice of God, and be able to just simply move with confidence. And it, it's not like the chapter in ADJ is holy and all that, but the content that is within it, and then Dave kind of helping align it. There was something incredibly special for me. And every time that I go over that chapter with guys, it seems like that chapter stands out the most for these guys. And that's when I see the trajectory of lives begin to change, because it's like the light bulb goes on and dude, that I'm actually hearing from God. He wants to speak to me. And that still blows my mind, that God would actually care about me enough that he would want to speak to me. I mean, that's just crazy. But then that has helped me move forward in just a holy confidence as I'm trying to follow him. So I love that particular chapter, man.
I love that. Well, listen, be on the lookout, because I'm going to be doing a blog series on that very topic, actually from Dave's notes, and that'll be out soon. So listen, here's how you can, if you're listening and you want to learn more about this resource that we're talking about, ADJ or a discipleship journey, you can get your copy of the brand new edition of that at lionshare.org. That's LIONSHARE.org. You can also subscribe to the teaching videos, the brand new teaching videos that accompany the study. And so as you go through the book, there are teaching videos that accompany and explain the material. Kent is actually one of the speakers on that. And
yeah,
those
man,
videos,
that was a fun project to be a part of, bro.
I bet it was. And those videos are very fresh, hot off the cam. And if you want the ebook, you can do that, and as well at Amazon, search for A Discipleship Journey by Dave Buehring. So we're going to get into our topic today. Without further ado, the ministry of availability, Kent, set this up. Talk to me about the ministry of availability and what it is.
Yeah, man. So this is like, since I have jumped on board as a missionary, that sounds so wild now. So I've served in the local church context for 23 years before stepping into this role with the Pittsburgh Steelers through the Ministry of Athletes in Action. And this is a term that I've been hearing within the circles of Athletes in Action, called this ministry of availability. And for me, what that looks like right now in my context is to be available on the sidelines, be available in the locker room, be available, have my home be available to players and coaches and their families, things like this. But as we were like getting ready for this today, you kind of forced me into a definition of what is the ministry of availability. So I thought about it, I prayed about it, and here's what I came up with, man. So the ministry of availability is a commitment of discipleship that promises access to your life within healthy boundaries. And so this takes focus, it takes margin, and it takes the ability to say no, even to good things, so that you can have the ministry of availability to the people that you are discipling.
That bears repeating. Run that back again for us.
Yeah, so the ministry of availability is a commitment of discipleship that promises access to your life within healthy boundaries to those that you're discipling. That's right. And that's going to take focus and margin and the ability to say no, even to really good things, so that you can be available to those that you're discipling.
I like that you said healthy boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, Jesus also had healthy boundaries. I was just reading in the scriptures where he went away to spend time with his father. So like, man, the brother, he had so much going on in his life. Everybody wanted something from him. And so he pulled away often within these healthy boundaries to spend time with his father. And I think that, he teaches us about Sabbath and rest and rhythms in our life that we need to have. So yes, healthy boundaries is huge within this ministry of availability.
Yeah. And it reminds me of something that Dave has taught throughout his different teachings and things. And it looks, there's some context to this, but he says that every need is not yours to meet.
That's so good.
And I remember when he said that a few years ago to me at a conference, or not just to me, but, because the idea sometimes as Christians, we think that, because I'm in this row, I'm in this assignment, I am doing whatever I'm doing. Every problem that comes up, I have to fix it. It's like whack-a-mole, right? It's like every pipe that busts, I got to go and put a Band-Aid over it. And it's like, you can't. You're not God. You're not Jesus. And as much as you are called to, in this case, this organization, this group, this people, still every need is not yours to meet. And that's where the healthy boundaries come in. And I like that context.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I think that so when you look at Jesus' life, he was, especially in the context of discipleship, he was absolutely available to his inner core.
Yeah.
Right. So there was one point in his ministry, as I've studied Jesus' ministry, where he basically says no to the entire crowd. So he's like, he's done teaching in these large settings, and he spends nearly like a year and some with only his closest disciples.
Yep.
And so he said no to a whole bunch of teaching opportunities, healing opportunities, meeting the needs of a whole crowd of people that wanted something from him. And he said no within those healthy boundaries to say, I'm going to focus in on just this small crew of people, and I'm going to pour everything that I've got into them so that they can, as the scriptures say, turn the world upside down.
Wow.
I think that speaks to something that you and I, anybody listening, we need to pay attention to in discipleship, that are we actually available to those that we're discipling? Because I think that we half-heart discipleship in our churches today, in our, organizations today, when we aren't available to those that we're discipling. And it just speaks to, relationships. And am I available to the people that I'm discipling? Not just to walk through a curriculum, a teaching series, but to actually, as the scriptures teach us, hey, I shared my whole life with you as well. Do we have the gaps in our schedule, the margin, I should say, in our schedule to actually entertain people at our homes and hang out with them outside of the scheduled, curriculum time that hey, we're just doing life together? And that's something that I've really been learning in my new assignment is, okay, do I have the time? And so saying no to some really great opportunities, especially with the role that I now have as the Steelers chaplain, my inbox every day has an opportunity where people are wanting me to come and teach. And like, I don't say that to pump myself up. It literally like that's the case. And so I've got to say no to so much stuff so that I can be available to the players and the coaches, the staff of the Steelers organization whom I'm discipling. But then there's also that inner core that I've said to them, like, dude, anything for you. I'll be available at any time for you. Obviously, here's my day off, but I won't even on that day, but I'm available. That's right. So that's just something that I've been learning in the process of discipleship within my new vocation. Saying I'm still a pastor, but completely different context of how I'm discipling these days by just saying, okay, this is what I am absolutely focused on. Nothing else is going to get in there, and I'm available to these players, coaches, organization.
And it really gets into this idea of, and I think it is Michael Hyatt. I might have the guy wrong there, but the quote goes something like this: in order to say yes to that, I have to say no to this.
Yeah.
In other words, I have to say no to what's in front of me to be available, to be freed up, to have the bandwidth, to have the margin to say yes to something else bigger, greater, later. And that's not something that's always easy to do. And it's something that, many of us have to learn that, no, I have to say no to this good thing. Like a perfect example was there are many times I had to say no to going out somewhere so that I could say yes to the gym, right? That was a commitment that I had to make at the time. And so it requires us to say no, even to, as you said, to good things so that we can say yes to something more important, greater, later.
Yeah, I agree, man. I one thing that I think of is Andy Stanley when he, basically, I won't get this quote exactly right, but he, I think he even wrote a book on this. The idea of you're going to cheat on somebody, right? So you've got to choose who you're going to cheat on. And for me, I'm not going to cheat on my wife with time with a whole bunch of other people. I'm not going to cheat on my 3 daughters, with, ministry focused and discipleship focused on a whole bunch of people. They are my first discipleship, right? Yeah. My wife, my 3 daughters. And then outside of that is, okay, I've got to choose to cheat on really great opportunities that are coming my way because I am focused on the Steelers organization, Athletes in Action, my assignment from God, and I could have so much stuff that I'm doing, but to have that ministry of availability to those within the Steelers organization, so I can with integrity say, literally, man, if you need anything, call me. I'll be there, and it's not just time. Like it's a posture.
That's good.
Ministry of availability is a posture to those that you are serving, and not everybody. We've got to make decisions. I guess as to what it is that we want to be available to, and within Jesus' call for discipleship, his mandate for discipleship, I think anybody who's listening, any follower of Jesus, we have made some pressing things in our lives like the first priority, and Jesus doesn't want to be a priority. The call of discipleship is not a priority. It needs to be central to everything that we do, and that requires us saying no to some really pressing things. And usually, man, when we say no to those things, we find out that like they're actually not that pressing.
That's right. Yeah. It helps us to reprioritize. And there's a nice chart that Dave has, and I've used it too, where there's a difference between putting Jesus at the top priority in a list, 1, 2, 3, versus putting him at the center. Because when something is at the center, it's like the sun. Everything revolves around that. And when you're talking about this, I'm actually thinking about the opportunity costs of discipleship. In other words, there's a cost to this. There's a cost to being available, and all these things you have to say no to. And it reminds me a lot about the scripture of when he talks about laying our lives down.
Yeah.
Laying our lives down. And that is very much an accurate picture here, I think, of what you're describing is, saying no to things, all these things, that's the opportunity cost, but then having to lay your life down so that you can be available, as you said, to serve.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when I think about the cost of discipleship, the cost of being available to be used by God in, whatever vocation that we serve in, if we have our schedules so jam-packed, meeting after meeting after meeting, there's no room for discipleship, right? And so as I have learned to say no to even some really great things because of the call of discipleship on my life, there are people who are really close to me within my inner circle that they are possibly getting upset because I am becoming laser focused on that ministry of availability. And so sometimes that's going to squeeze them out of that, circle. And so you've got to be certain of your ministry of availability and this call on your life. And here's the thing, as followers of Jesus, we're all called to this, but we're not called, to have so many people that we're discipling. I can still be available within, the Steelers season, but there's only a few that I make myself so available to, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm called to serve the Steelers organization in this capacity as chaplain and also my wife. So we team together in this. But it's also caused us to squeeze out some things and even some relationships that we say like, okay, for this period of time, especially during the NFL season, we've got to say no so that later in the, off season, we'll be able to say, okay, now let's get together, because, players are traveling, coaches are out of town, that kind of thing. So we've got to even be prepared. The cost of it, that it might cost us some friendships, some eyebrows raised, like, come on, man, seriously? You take discipleship that seriously?
Yeah.
So, I agree with you, man.
But Jesus did. He did take it very seriously. And like you said earlier in the broadcast, in the podcast, that he had to say no to the crowd so he could be with the core, be with the 12. Right. And that was something that he did. And there was times where he told them no so that he could go be with the Father. Yeah. Like these are all decisions that we have to make. And, when we're going to disciple and be about that disciple making life, these are the decisions that we make. And I like how you are putting the emphasis that it's not about this. It's not so much about quantity. quantity. And I think this whole entire topic is good. You know, this will be airing at the top of the year, 2022. And, you know, new year, new me, everybody's kind of running and, you know, picking up all these things and starting all these goals. And it's like, you know, this is a good reminder and refresher. And so talk to me a little bit about, and then we're going to take a brief break. Talk to me a little bit about how this has just changed your life, the ministry of availability.
Yeah. So I think a part of this, man, is as I get older, so I'm 44 years old at the time of this recording. And, you know, I've been in ministry in the local church context for 22, 23 years before jumping in with Athletes in Action. And I think a part of it has to do with getting older, but a part of it has to do with ministry focus, is that I am learning, I should say, how to become laser focused on this issue. And so as a pastor in the local church context, and man, we need to pray for our pastors. Now that I'm out of the pulpit, so to speak, in a local church context, my eyes have been open to a lot of things. I'm still part of a local church, and I pray for my pastors because, man, it's a brutal post. You know, and I think there's, you know, some things that I realized as a pastor, maybe I'll say it this way, a pastor in the American church, there's so much that is pressing. It's like an expectation to be the CEO. It's an expectation to, you know, lead the budget. It's an expectation to be HR. It's the expectation to lead staff. I mean, there is so much that is on a pastor's plate that we need to pray for our pastors. But here's what I'm now learning in my local post, man. I had so much stuff as a pastor that I was focusing on in the local church context that now this jump that I believe that God called Erica and me to has caused us to be laser focused in the area of discipleship and discipleship only, right? To be alongsiders of people before they even know Jesus. You know, my hope is within the Steelers organization and the NFL to enhance, as Dave, you know, has taught us, to enhance God's reputation in the eyes of other people.
That's right.
Whether they say yes to Jesus or not, but when they leave a conversation with you or an interaction with you, they're going, wow. God, if that's what God is like, then man. So it's enhancing his reputation. And so I think this post, man, has caused me to really, really focus. I have learned over the last 3 seasons with the Steelers, I have to say no. And so that's been hard because I'm a guy who, man, I love to help people. I'm a pastor shepherd at heart. So whenever people come to me with wedding requests and speaking requests and can you do this funeral? I feel awful, but I'm saying I have to focus over here on the Steelers organization because that's God's call. So I think I'm learning that. I haven't been perfect at it. In fact, that's why I think sometimes I'm exhausted. But I feel like that's something that God is using this assignment for, is to say, Kent, you have to focus extremely on what I've called you to do. Discipleship, raising up disciples within the NFL. And I'm going, wow, I have to focus on that because that's a big assignment.
Man, I don't think there's too many other things we can really say to fully articulate just or appreciate really just the value of focus. It reminds me of what Steve Jobs, the late Steve Jobs, head of Apple, said to his chief designer several years ago. He said, "How many things did you say no to today?" Yeah. And as we know, the iPhone has gone on to be the number one selling smartphone in the world. And just yesterday, Apple crossed the $3 trillion market cap, largest company in the world. And that's what he would tell his chief designer. What did you say no to today? because it was that ability to push out all the noise and focus. Listen, we're going to take a brief break and then we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
LionShare's mission is to ignite and equip Christians and the church to make disciple makers. You can support this podcast and our mission by going to lionshare.org/donate, where you can make a gift of any size. You can also give on the new LionShare app. There you can find quick access to our store to buy the new version of A Discipleship Journey, the book we've been discussing this season. By downloading the LionShare Leadership Group app, you'll also get access to Dave's Devotionals, a free daily 2-minute video devotion from Dave Buehring that focuses on God's nature, character, and attributes. That's the LionShare Leadership Group app, available at the App Store and on Google Play.
So you're listening to Wisdom Unlocked, the Ways of God. And today we're talking about the ministry of availability with myself, Mel Mills, and Kent Chevalier, the chaplain of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, Kent, we're getting ready to wrap this discussion up. We've had an awesome discussion on this ministry of availability and focusing and just the value and the commitment and the cost that comes along with discipleship. So I want to ask you at this point, obviously you're giving us this perspective of the ministry of availability within the context of your vocation as the chaplain with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But is this something that we can all apply to our lives at some level? Is this something that we all should be doing? And how do we do that? Should we and how should we do that?
Yeah, Mel, I think that, I've got my assignment with Athletes in Action, Pittsburgh Steelers. That's very specific, right?
Yeah.
I think this is true in anybody's life, no matter what vocation you are a part of.
That's good.
When I think about mom, she has a very specific assignment to disciple her children, right? When I think about dad, he has that assignment to disciple his children, and we can't outsource that to the church. We can outsource, baseball. We can outsource lacrosse. We can outsource dance lessons, this kind of thing. But you cannot outsource discipleship with your kids. It takes focus. It takes parenting, saying no to certain things so that you make sure that you are discipling your children. When I think about, businessmen and women, right? And you think about how can I leverage my role within this business to be about the business of Jesus, making disciples. What does that look like? And it would take risk. It would take focus. To be able to, within your setting, to make disciples of other businessmen and other businesswomen, right? So I think that no matter what vocation we find ourselves in, as God has called us there, we have a much higher calling to make disciples, and that's going to take us focus within that setting. And it might not always look within our current vocation, but it might be a young man or young woman in your church that needs a spiritual parent. And so what does that look like? Are you focused in on that kind of thing? So it takes discipline. It takes us in our culture today, because we have everything right at our fingertips and we can be involved in so much stuff, right? We have so many opportunities in our culture today. It's okay to say no to all of those opportunities except for a few, right, where we can actually represent Jesus really well and make disciples. So I think all of us can do this. It doesn't have to take a ministry role.
That's
right?
Good.
I believe that every member of the church, that's all of us. We don't go to church, right? We are the church.
That's right.
Every member of the church is a minister, is a discipler of Jesus. And so how can we focus in on that in 2022 as we, record this, session today? What do we need to say no to that we've been saying yes to, and the very thing that God's trying to kill and get out of our lives, we kind of keep it up and keep it, juggling those, balls, so to speak. And God's going, I want you to drop that. Stop it.
Yeah.
and it's the one that we don't feel like we're giving ourselves to in a good way. See, I think many of us, Erica and I just had this discussion. We are good at so many things, but God is calling us to the great commandment, right? And so we've got to drop the good so that we can focus on the great.
That's
what
good.
does that look like in your life, in your family? So I think all of us can focus in on this, man.
That's good. It's the art of keeping the main thing the main thing.
That's right.
And man, that will always cost you something. So we are at time, and this has been a phenomenal discussion. I hope you guys are enjoying this and have enjoyed this. Ken, any final thoughts about the ministry of availability from you, or what you want people to know? Yeah.
And I think, Mel, this is something that you do well. In your context, I think, this is something that Dave has done extremely well. Sonia has done extremely well. We're passionate about the ministry of availability when it comes to discipleship. And so my final thought would be, if you don't know where to start in this ministry of availability and discipleship, hey, just ask God. What do I need to say no to so that I can say yes to discipleship and being available to disciple people? God, what do I need to say no to? I think that would be a great question for us to ask as we end this. Yeah.
I love that. And I would also add, in asking that question, to be ready to follow through with it. I've been very guilty of asking God for something, but not having my heart prepared with obedience to respond. In other words, I have an expectation of what I might want him to answer with, but when he says something else, it's like, okay, so are you still going, you're still going to say yes. So in asking God to, show me what to say no to let's go into that with a prepared heart to follow wherever he leads.
Yeah, it reminds me of the line where, Dave says, hey, what God reveals is not meant to be negotiated. It's meant to be obeyed. And this idea of applying what it is that God reveals to your life. Don't let it just linger out there, because then it gets lost. God is revealing something so that you actually do something about it. So thanks, Mel.
That's right. That's where the transformation comes in. And so, Kent, thank you so much. Where can listeners find out more about you and connect with you and what you're doing?
Yeah, man. So thank you for that. If anybody's interested in the ministry that Erica and I are part of, Athletes in Action, you can go to teamchevalier.org or .com, actually, teamchevalier.com. And man, you just see kind of how God called us into this. It's a crazy story that we love to tell. So people can find us there, man.
And we'll put that in the show notes as well, teamchevalier.com. So you can go check that out. And we'll also include your social handles. You can keep up with me at The Mel Mills on Twitter, and look forward to catching up with you guys on there. A couple reminders. Remember to check out A Discipleship Journey. That's our proven practical tool for making disciples of Jesus. And that is available at lionshare.org, along with brand new teaching videos that Kent is a part of. And you can also check out our brand new app that just recently launched. You can go to your app store and search Lionshare Leadership Group. That's Lionshare Leadership Group on your app store. And you can get access to those free daily devotionals by Dave Buehring, our founder and president. And there's one for each day, 365 videos that you can just kind of pour out. They're very short, 30 seconds to a minute or so. And you can just rehearse and soak up the ways, character, attributes of God, one for each day. And last but not least, if you've enjoyed the podcast, we would really appreciate you helping us get the word out by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. The reviews you leave help us to get this out to more people so we can make more disciples, equip more disciple makers. So I'm Mel Mills with Kent Chevalier. We thank you guys for tuning in and joining us today. Until next time, keep it kingdom.
Wisdom Unlocked: The Ways of God is a production of Lionshare, a ministry that ignites and provides resources to disciple makers in the church and throughout the vocations. To learn more about what we do and how we can help you, please visit lionshare.org. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Vimeo.
you.